Washington's reflecting pool got a pricey makeover, then the paint peeled. The president blames vandals. There's no proof, but the arrests started. Let's watch.
I would like to talk with you about the reflecting pool, as we discussed yesterday. At the moment, the park police are making arrests around the reflecting pool. The president has claimed that vandals, quoting him here, took some form of knife or blade and put a 250-foot-long gash into the beautiful facade of what took so much work, competence, and money to build and complete. He increased the estimate to 300 feet later, then to 350 feet, insisting that it was, quoting him again, cut and powerfully lifted off the surface, leaving very jagged, uneven edges. He was asked what proof there was of any of that, since it doesn't seem to be visible to any other person. And he said, well, you'll have to go see the Parks Department. They'll show it to you, or see the secretary, but I saw it. We have pictures. He also said, you'll see it in court. So you were a police commissioner in Texas, understand it? When people visiting the reflecting pool are being arrested, handcuffed, and dragged away by your police officers, you'd like to think that they have proper probable cause to arrest someone. I grew up in the Foreign Service, and there were plenty of countries in which arrests made to satisfy a political leader's narrative that had no basis in fact was something that they did. The American system of justice has not operated that way. What can you tell me here today about what damage was done to the reflecting pool, where this 350-foot gash came from, and why tourists are being arrested? What is the factual predicate for these arrests?
Yes, sir, thank you. And indeed, I have spent, as a son of a police officer, as well as a police commissioner, I've spent virtually my entire life in and around the law enforcement industry, or business community, rather.
So you'd agree with me that arresting tourists to vindicate a political narrative, not because of any evidence of a crime, would be a wrong thing to do if that were what happened, correct?
Senator, the U.S. Park Police is one of the most extraordinary and historic police departments in the United States, founded in 1789. And in the year that I've had the opportunity and pleasure and privilege and honor to work with them, I have been amazingly impressed by their professionalism, their training, their discipline, their service, and their duty and service to this district and the people that live here.
Yeah, which is why these incidents seem so aggravating, and I'd like to ask you to respond to
and
that.
Consequently, sir, I would say that, and I think that all people would agree, that ensuring that law and order is maintained for anyone to apply, and I'm not saying that you are, that the U.S. Park Police in any way use political motivation to carry out their duties, I think would be unjust, and in some ways an egregious accusation.
So what's the predicate then? Was there in fact a 350-foot gash done by a vandal to the reflecting pool?
The predicate, sir, is that I have no doubt that the police officers involved in the apprehensions of these individuals, of which I believe there were 5, were doing their duty, were enforcing the law appropriately. And I think that all of us should recognize and believe that vandalism of any kind is an affront to civilized society. Yeah, it hurts everyone.
But Mr. Lilly, the question is, was there vandalism? Did someone cut a 350-foot gash in the reflecting pool? And what vandalism did these individuals do? Is it really vandalism to pick a piece of floating peeled paint out of the reflection pool? People have run through the reflecting pool in the past. The president drove through the reflecting pool, apparently.
Sir, I stand by my statement that the U.S. Park Police operated and conducted their business of protecting this city in an appropriate manner. There was no malfeasance, nor was there any political motivation to it. And furthermore, sir, as you know, this is an ongoing investigation, and consequently, I'm not in a position to share that information publicly. But once it is available publicly, I'm happy to meet with you. I met with you yesterday, sir. I'll meet with you anytime.
Was there or was there not a 350-foot gash in the reflecting pool?
Senator, I stand by
one now?
I stand by my statement, sir.
Your statement doesn't answer the question.
I stand by my statement, sir.
Okay, don't want to answer the question. I can see why you don't want to answer the question. You're in a terrible position because the president has made up a 350-foot gash, and unfortunately now police officers are being put in the position of having to make arrests that I suspect are going to fare very badly in court because there's nothing about touching the reflecting pool or picking up a piece of floating, peeling paint that amounts to vandalism as a matter of law. Thank you, Chairman.
Let's break down one of the stranger hearings you will see this year. A Senate committee, a Trump interior nominee named Kevin Lilly, and a question that should have been simple. Was the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool actually vandalized? The president says yes, and he has put a number on it. The record so far says something very different. We are going to walk through both. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse set the table plainly. Right now, he noted, the park police are making arrests around the reflecting pool. People are being charged. So the question of whether a crime actually happened is not academic. It is the difference between a real case and an empty one. Here is the claim at the center of it, in the president's own words, as Whitehouse read them into the record. The damage, he said, was dramatic and deliberate. Sit with the specifics for a second, because they matter. A knife or a blade, a gash that runs 250 feet, a beautiful facade deliberately cut. That is not a story about peeling paint. It is a story about a planned act of destruction. So the obvious question is whether there is any proof. And this is where it gets shaky. According to ABC News, NPR, and Snopes, the president provided no evidence for the claim. He pointed reporters to the Interior Department and the Park Service. Neither the Interior Department nor the White House has produced evidence that the pool lining was cut. Then there is the detail that tells you the most. The size of the gash kept changing. It started at 250 feet. Then it was 300. Then it became, in his telling, numerous slashes over a very long 350-foot length. A real measurement does not grow every time you describe it. So line the two stories up. The president describes a deliberate knife attack on a national monument. The available record shows no evidence of a cut, and a number that changes with each retelling. One of these is a documented fact. The other is a description in search of proof. To understand what probably did happen, you have to back up a few weeks, to a renovation that did not go to plan. This is the part the vandalism story conveniently skips. Start with the money. The reflecting pool was given a renovation that cost more than $16 million, according to reporting on the project. That was about $4 million over the estimate. Part of the job was painting the pool blue on a deadline ahead of the 250th anniversary celebrations. Here is what happened next, and it is not a crime story. In the days after the work was finished, the pool was plagued with an algae bloom and with peeling paint. To deal with the algae, crews ran treatments. And during those treatments, the pool's liner began to surface. Paint started to delaminate. That is the kind of thing that happens to a rushed paint job on water. So look at the sequence without the president's narration. A $16 million job done fast for a holiday. An algae bloom within days. Treatments that lifted the new paint. A liner peeling up on its own. None of that requires a vandal with a knife. It just requires a paint job that did not hold. This is the heart of the dispute, and it is not really about politics. It is about cause. Was the damage cut into the pool by people, or did a fast, expensive paint job simply fail in the water? The president picked the first answer. The physical evidence so far fits the second. PBS put the question to experts who study exactly this kind of material. Their answer did not help the vandalism theory. Now to the part that turns a strange story into a serious one. Because while the evidence for vandalism stayed thin, the arrests were very real. Look at the numbers and watch them shrink. The Interior Department said 5 people have been arrested and 5 more issued federal citations. But when the records were checked, just 1 person had actually been charged. The arrests, like the gash, were bigger in the telling than on paper. And then there is the case that should stop you. One of the people detained was David Hearn, known as Davy, a 3-time Olympic canoeist. He was held for about 5 hours. His offense, as reported, was touching a piece of the detached coating, a piece of paint that had already peeled off on its own. Put those two facts side by side, because together they are the story. The evidence of a deliberate gash is missing, but a man spent 5 hours in custody for picking up peeling paint. The proof shrank and the consequences grew. That is exactly backwards from how this is supposed to work. Which brings us back to the hearing room and to the nominee who walked into the middle of all this. Kevin Lilly did not start this story. He just had to answer for it. Whitehouse was not really cross-examining Lilly as a villain. He was pointing at the bind the nominee was in. Lilly is being asked to stand behind a presidential claim that the evidence does not support, while the agency he hopes to serve is the one making the arrests. That is a hard place to stand. Whitehouse said the quiet part out loud, and it was less an attack on the nominee than a warning about the position he had been put in. Think about what that means for the people downstream of a claim like this. The park police have to make the arrests. Prosecutors have to bring the charges. A nominee has to defend it under oath. Each of them inherits a story they did not write, and each of them carries the risk if it falls apart. And here's why Whitehouse kept circling back to the law, because this is where a made-up number becomes a real legal problem. His legal point was simple, and he stated it directly. The thing people are being arrested for may not be a crime at all. And he went further, predicting where this ends up. The cases, he said, are going to fare very badly in court. If the alleged act is touching material that had already detached, then there is no destruction of property and no intent to destroy. Without those, the vandalism charge has nothing to stand on. So the legal collision is clean. To charge vandalism, you need damage that someone caused on purpose. The record shows material that came apart on its own, and people who, at most, touched it. One of those supports a prosecution, the other does not. Now, to be fair, the administration did eventually put something on paper. So let's give that document a real look, because it is the strongest version of their case. In a court filing dated June 24th, a Park Service Deputy Director, Frank Lands, laid out specifics. He stated that caulk over foam sealant had been cut with a sharp knife or razor, that delaminating surface material had been destroyed, and that roughly 70 fence post tops had been thrown into the pool. That is a more careful claim than a 350-foot gash, and it deserves to be weighed honestly. But notice what it does. It trades the dramatic number for smaller, specific allegations. Cut caulk. Destroyed material that was already delaminating. Fence posts in the water. The headline shrank from a monument-length gash to caulk and fence posts. And even on those narrower claims, the experts PBS consulted were not sold. The core problem does not go away. When a surface is already delaminating, it is genuinely hard to tell a knife cut from a material that is failing on its own. Calling degradation destruction does not make it a crime. So the filing narrows the gap, but it does not close it. The government says deliberate damage. The experts say possible degradation. And the one piece that would settle it, clear proof of a knife cut on intact material, is the piece nobody has produced. Step back and watch the whole thing unfold in order. A rushed, costly renovation, an algae bloom, peeling paint, a presidential claim of a deliberate gash, arrests, and only afterward a filing trying to supply the evidence the claim never had. And that order is the whole problem. The claim came first. The evidence was sent to catch up. So Whitehouse's framing lands hard. So why does a fight over a swimming pool matter? Because of what it does to the people caught between a claim and its consequences. 3 things are at stake here, and none of them are about paint. Whether the government can manufacture a crime to explain a botched project, whether ordinary people get arrested to fit a story, and whether public servants, from officers to nominees, get asked to defend something that is not true. Those are real costs. And there is a simpler accountability question buried in it. $16 million was spent, $4 million over budget, and within days the paint failed. The vandalism story does one convenient thing. It moves the blame from the people who ran the project to a phantom with a knife. That is the part worth holding on to. If the pool failed because the work was rushed, that is a story about competence and money. If vandals did it, that is a story about crime. Only one of those reflects badly on the people in charge. It is not hard to see why one version is preferred. Whitehouse summed up the danger of getting this wrong, and it was not about politics. It was about the courts and about the officers being sent in. So let's total it up honestly the way a fact check should. The Gash has no confirmed evidence. The number kept growing. The likeliest cause is a failed paint job. The arrests outran the charges, and the experts are not convinced by the filing. That is the record, point by point. It is worth saying what this is not. It is not a claim that nobody touched the pool, or that no fence post ever went in the water. People may well have handled peeling material. The point is narrower and more important. Touching the aftermath of a failed renovation is not the deliberate, knife-cut gash the president described. And that gap between what was described and what can be shown is the entire hearing. Whitehouse was not litigating a pool. He was asking a nominee to acknowledge that a claim and its evidence do not match, and to think about who pays for that gap. So where does this leave the nominee, the pool, and the people arrested around it? With a few things worth watching. Watch 3 things. Whether the government ever shows clear proof of a knife cut on intact material, whether the cases survive in court or get tossed the way Whitehouse predicted, and whether anyone is held accountable for a $16 million job that peeled within days. Those answers will come on the record. Until then, the honest summary is the one the hearing kept circling. A claim arrived first, fully formed and very specific. The evidence has been trying to catch up to it ever since. And that is the real story of the reflecting pool. Not a gash, but a gap. A gap between what was said and what can be proven, with real arrests filling the space in between. That is our breakdown. Stay with us.